Of all the forms of nonverbal communication, color is definitely one of the most instantaneous methods of conveying a message and of meaning. Besides other uses of color, color stimulates and works synergistically with all of our other senses. We can use color to symbolize abstract concepts and thoughts. We can use color to express fantasy and wish fulfillment. Colors can recall certain times and places, and they definitely produce an emotional response in the viewers. So most of our human reaction to color is subliminal and subconscious. So consumers are generally unaware of this pervasive and persuasive effect that color has on their buying habits. The psychological effect is so instantaneous that the color stimulates our senses and exerts its power of suggestion. So it's really important that we use color effectively since it's very powerful, and the use of color strategically is pretty much seen at every level of visual communication. It's in corporate identification and logos like we're developing here. It's in signage, advertising, it's on billboards, it's in print media, packaging for sure. You're going to see it both digitally and at point of purchase displays and in print. So you're seeing color everywhere. You see visual communication, and it's being used very strategically. So we're going to kind of start to dip our toe into this idea. All right. Today we're going to talk very broadly and very generally. So while everyone has personal preferences and experiences and cultural differences and different contexts for how they view colors and how different colors affect them, there are also very broad patterns of color perception that a lot of marketers hold true. And it is these very broad definitions of the colors that we're going to focus on today. So we're going to go through each of the colors and talk about some of the different attributes that are associated with these various colors. So the first color being red, right? So when we see red, the pituitary gland really springs into action. We have a physiological reaction to seeing the color red, where we don't really have any control over the effect that it has on our bodies. These warm tones are known as high arousal colors, and red, in particular, creates the highest arousal threshold in humans. So there's a reason why red is associated with, you know, sexiness and, you know, love, lust, all of those very arousing sort of ideas. So from negligees to sports cars to food, red can stimulate all kinds of appetites. And so it's true that red can literally turn you on. And that then makes sense why so much packaging in the grocery store is using the color red. Next time you go shopping, you're going to have a whole new experience when you walk through the aisles looking at all the colors. Red also has a very aggressive nature. It commands attention and it demands action. When we deepen the red tones into shades of burgundy, they still maintain their inherent excitement, but they become a little more subdued. So consumers seem to respond to these more wine tones as rich, refined, and expensive. They're seen more as shades of authoritative, mature, lush, opulent, and elegant versus the vivid red, the sexy red. So burgundy would be like a nice choice for a very expensive product, like an automobile. And here are a couple different brands who have red as their primary color. And this is just a summary list of all of the positive and negative attributes associated with the color red. Obviously, your shade of red will definitely play into what is being expressed, as we kind of talked about with the burgundy versus a true red. And just because something is in a negative category doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. If you're working on a brand that really wants to promote the idea of danger, then danger isn't a negative attribute to you, it's a positive attribute. So take the positive and negative under the guise of it kind of depends on what you're trying to say. So these are some of the different attributes of red. This lecture, if you didn't notice, the actual PowerPoint is up in the folder on Drive, so you don't have to take copious notes. You can refer to this, save a copy, refer to it as you would like to for this project and future projects. Okay, so the next color is pink. Depending on its value or intensity, pink has pretty diverse mood swings, right? You can think of the vivid, shocking, hot pinks, which have, high energy and a much more vivacious spirit, like red, as in this example of Barbie pink. And then pink goes all the way down into the very pastel, pretty tones of pink. So there's a wide spectrum of pink. These brighter, more vibrant pinks are definitely seen as energetic, youthful. They create a feeling of movement and wild abandon. So they're fun and they're exciting, but they're actually a little bit riskier to use than red because pink definitely has a perception of being faddish and of being very juvenile. So the color pink is thought to not age as well as red. Again, I think it depends on who your audience is, right? Whether or not pink is appropriate or red is appropriate. If you start pulling your pink towards more of magenta or fuchsia, that seems to be perceived as a more grown-up version of pink, and they become a little more sensual and theatrical. And of course, on the other end of our vibrant, vivid pinks is this very pretty pastel-y pink. Definitely a cosmetic industry favorite. This lighter, more sultry pink definitely is a good attention grabber at a point of purchase. It has a little bit more of an upscale and a sophisticated look. This lighter, less saturated pink is really a watered down red with all of the intensity removed. So that raw sensuality of red is gone, and what you have left is romanticism. So definitely be cautious of your bubblegum pinks that look really immature and artificial because they could start to look tacky. And think about more of these more romantic, more softer pinks if that's what your audience is all about. Again, it depends what you're doing. So here are just a couple more examples of some lighter pink options. These more like light pink, rose kind of petal pinks are seen as healthy and optimistic colors. You could think of the phrase rose-colored glasses. So pink can definitely give you a nice rosy glow. And in fact, this sort of shade of pink makes people look healthier when you stick people next to this nice rosy pink. So pink can be an excellent color for healthcare products, cosmetic products, facial salons, spas, and packaging on those kinds of products. And again, here are some different logos that use pink and different tones of pink. But pink is definitely seen in a lot of, toys, dolls, and kind of novelty kind of goods. And again, here are some attributes associated with pink. And this color is, shout it out, orange. So orange is definitely also a high arousal color, and it's, associated with autumn foliage, of course, or maybe a radiant sunset. So it's definitely the most vivid in intensities. As like I was saying, so temperature-wise, orange is seen as the hottest of all the colors. So it's also a high arousal color, but it's also perceived as a color that shouldn't be taken too seriously. Orange is like a dramatic exclamation point, and it's just generally preferred by a more extroverted personality and or brand personality. So definitely has a different vibe than red. Orange is playful, orange is gregarious, orange is happy, and orange is childlike. It's actually been proven that children between the ages of 3 and 6 have a predilection or like a preference for orange, plus adolescence. And anyone apparently who got arrested during the stage of adolescence all have an inclination towards the color orange. So there you go. So orange radiates with warmth and vitality. It really shows itself well in ethnic themes, combined with products that, are from different cultures that have these very vibrant cuisines like Mexican salsa or Indian curries. So orange, along with red and yellow, have been shown to exert a measurable effect on the nervous system to stimulate the appetite. So again, another appetite-inducing color like red was, which is why you'll definitely see it in a lot of food packaging. It's also really like a very visible color, so it's really great for point of purchase displays because it just pops off the shelf. With that in mind, orange is definitely an excellent color for toys and games, inexpensive plastic and novelty products that appeal to the younger audience or the younger at heart age groups. So if you tone orange down, you get the pretty peachy kind of colors. And research has revealed that these lighter shades of orange, like peach and apricot, coral and melon, have some of the most pleasant word associations. So these softer shades of orange are not only pleasing to the sophisticated eye, but very appealing to the upscale and affluent market. They're considered nurturing, approachable, and very tactile colors. There's that appeal of a velvety peach. People just want to reach out and taste it. So I think that's really interesting. It's like a complete 180 from like pow, orange, to how people perceive these really subtle orange colors. So just like light pink, peach tones are an excellent choice in healthcare products, dining areas, food service, and food packaging because they are more subtle appetite stimulants. and they are always associated with deliciousness, right? All the foods in this palette are delicious. But back to our vivid orange. Orange is perceived as a color that shouldn't be taken too seriously. And here are some different brands that embrace that jovial orange. And here are some of our attributes. Okay, next color is yellow. So yellow is also a warm color, and it's considered to be the brightest and most energizing color. It's definitely associated with happiness and sunshine, but it's also used to convey warnings and caution. Think about construction signs and road signs, right? I think it's really interesting to know that yellow is the fastest color that the brain processes. So that's why it's so good at grabbing our attention, and probably why the road signs are yellow, right? So like red, yellow is also an appetite stimulant and tends to make people feel cheerful and optimistic. So studies have been shown that when you look at the color yellow, your brain releases serotonin, the feel-good chemical, which could then be used to make consumers feel good about what they are buying. So that makes sense. And then you can definitely understand why using red and yellow together evokes the taste buds and stimulates the appetite. And thus it is a popular choice in the fast food industry like McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut, KFC, Hardee's. There's tons of red and yellow brand color combos out there. And now you know why. Here's some more yellow packaging. Like we said, yellow is the first color your brain processes, so it makes sense that you put yellow on boxes and it pops off the shelf. Yellow is a kind of tricky color for a logo because depending on your shade of yellow and how much ink coverage you have, sometimes it's hard to see yellow on a white piece of paper. But as you can see in these examples, definitely choosing the right shade of yellow really helps and is possible. And here are all of our attributes of yellow. I think it's interesting when you look at this list that the negative side is so long. And it's definitely some words that I didn't necessarily associate with yellow, to be honest with you, like betrayal, jealousy, deceit. But then other words, when you read them, it makes sense, like illness. Like if you look yellow in the face, you look sickly. And then cowardice, there's like that old expression like yellow belly from like the cowboy days. So I guess that's where that word comes into play. So again, obviously perceptions definitely play into, phrasing and different associations that not everybody might have, especially of like a certain age group. Like I think cowardice maybe would be people who are more familiar with that expression than maybe younger people. So that kind of stuff. But anyway, here's your list of yellow. Our next color is brown. It's hard to find a brown picture. Brown. So brown has been found to be people's least favorite color around the world. So the whole world, not a fan of brown, but it's still used in marketing quite a bit. In terms of color psychology, it is believed to help create a wholesome feeling, a connection with the earth, a sense of orderliness and convention. Brown is a stable and grounded color that is believed to help you feel like you fit in and you belong. So, while maybe people don't pick brown as their favorite color, using brown can definitely still promote some good attributes that you as a brand might want to be promoting about yourself. Brown is definitely used in food packaging since it can signify that the food is natural and earthy or eco-friendly, right? Coffee and chocolate definitely makes sense to use brown in their packaging since it's the color of their product. And also a lot of times in food packaging, brown is used instead of black since brown is much more appetizing, but it still has some of the same qualities as black. Again, here's a couple brands that use brown as their primary color. And here are some attributes. Okay, so our next color is blue. Wouldn't we all like to be there right now? Blue. Okay, so light blues can definitely be both refreshing and friendly, and your darker blues are considered strong and reliable. So blue is the most unappetizing color when it comes to food and drink. Besides blueberries, the color blue is not really a natural food color, and it might even turn some people off to the packaging if it's blue. But blue also implies water and freshness. So a light blue could be a good color choice for like a product like a bottled water or milk or seafood, where you are trying to harken back to more of the fresh water sort of association with the color. And in like the early part of this century, blue was seen a lot being associated with low calorie options. Like Weight Watchers brand colors were blue. I don't know if they still are. Which makes sense since blue seems to suppress the appetite and reduce hunger. In general, blue is one of the most preferred colors by both men and women, and many people relate blue with trust, honesty, and dependability, which makes sense then why blue is a favorite of corporations for their brand color. There are a million large brands, large well-known brands, that blue is their primary brand color. This is just a smattering up top there. And it makes sense why, right? What company doesn't want to be considered trustworthy, honest, and dependable? Here are a few more logos that are kind of playing with different shades of blue. Again, blue definitely has a very wide range of colors to choose from, like all of these colors. And again, there's like a very long list of attributes. And I think your tone of blue really plays into what you're promoting here. I think the negative ones are interesting, right? Like sadness, cold. Definitely, if you had it in a certain context, blue promotes, suggests those kinds of things. All right, so now we've got green. Unsurprisingly, green is a cool tone color and considered earthy. Green will invoke images of nature, which signifies renewal and abundance. So I don't think that's a big stretch for anyone. When you say green, I think you probably immediately think of leaves, grass, other natural elements. So that helps play into the idea of renewal and abundance. Green has a calming effect like blue does, but it has a little bit of the energizing tones of yellow. So a brighter green, the more energizing it will be. A darker green, the more subdued and calming it will be. So here's sort of two different types of greens. I really love those Lego ads. Side note. So when we're using these more muted and olivey greens, they work really nice for designs that are about nature and the natural world. And darker greens are really good for promoting the idea of stability, and they represent wealth, which makes sense, right? Because our money is green. And a lot of banks have this darker green as their brand color. Now that I've said that, you'll notice if you've never noticed before. And green is definitely a color, especially when we're talking about packaging, with associated with being fresh and healthy and natural, organic, maybe vegetarian even. So green has definitely become a symbol for health and well-being. So if you're working on packaging and you want to promote, or make a claim about having natural ingredients or health benefits, green is probably your color. It's also often used when you're trying to promote ecological and environmentally friendly practices or processes, all of those things. Green. And here is just a smattering of green logos out there. I think green now too definitely plays into like energy efficiency and all of those sort of alternate energy sources, like again, like happy planet sort of companies. And here's your full, or not even a full list. Here's a list of positive and negatives. The negatives are interesting, right? Like green with envy. I don't personally usually associate green with any of these negative things, but I could see how maybe you could. It's on the list. And then green, definitely like playing off of the like nature and natural. There's, spring, fertility, religion, youth. So it's an interesting list. Next we have purple. Again, not a very natural color. So purple. Before we had modern day dyes, purple was really hard to find and extremely expensive to make. So only royalty and the extremely wealthy could afford purple garments or fabric. So given that history, dark purple is still associated with wealth and royalty. Here's some very rich looking products. However, much like pink and orange, the lighter purples, like lavender, are associated with softness and a much more tender, romantic love. So where red, was your passionate love, and pink was your romanticism, lavender is a tender, romantic love. Isn't that nice? So here are some logos that use purple as their brand color. Again, it's an interesting list. There's some technology in here. There's a lot of food products. Wonka and Cadbury are two chocolate companies, so that makes sense, like rich chocolate. Wellness, wholesome, Brock's, Light and Fit. Again, all different food sort of stuff. So, an interesting list of purple. And again, purple, royalty, passion, sophistication. The negatives are interesting again. I don't know. All right, we're getting there. We're on to white. So white portrays cleanliness, purity, and simplicity. When used in packaging, usually white makes people think that the product doesn't contain a lot of ingredients. So it's popular with consumers when the packaging maybe is uh, the same color as the product, right? Like milk or cheese or yogurt, cream. And that can give the impression of the product being fresh and natural. White is definitely a more effective color when used as a base, so that all the other accent colors, can pop off of the background. There's definitely a growing group of packaging that's using white really to try to promote this idea of simple ingredients, not so many ingredients when you're talking about packaging for food products. One of the downsides using white in your packaging is that it gets dirty really easily, right? Especially if people are picking up your product and looking at it and touching it, your white packaging is going to start to look grimy. Here are some logos. Again, I don't think many companies use white as their primary brand color for the simple fact of you can't have a white logo with a white piece of paper, right? But almost every company has a white version of their logo so that you can put your logo on top of a photograph or, background or some other colored surface. And here are adjectives for positive and negative of white. Okay, and then I've got gray. So gray sits somewhere on the color spectrum between black and white. And of course, there are many different shades of gray. And gray can definitely go into the conservative, boring, drab, depressing channel, but it can also fall into the more elegant and formal idea. So, and it's definitely considered, dark gray is more depressing than light gray. But I would also say that maybe dark gray is a little bit more elegant and formal than light gray. It really depends on the context of the gray. Gray is definitely used in logos since it goes well with so many other colors. It's not quite as bold or as stark as black or white would be. It has a nice steadying effect on all the other colors around it. So it sort of tones down maybe some of the stronger, brighter colors and illuminates some of the softer colors. So again, your choice of tone of gray is very important to make sure that your stuff looks nice and is legible. But I think it is a really nice choice, especially nowadays. You see a lot of dark gray text instead of black for this very reason, that it's just not quite as harsh as full black is. There are some brands that use gray as their primary color. Wikipedia, WordPress, some of the car manufacturers, and definitely Apple, I think of when I think of gray, or that silvery computer color. And I think gray is a really interesting one. The age group, the age range of the people viewing your material perceive gray in different ways. The younger people definitely associate gray more with like modern, solid, clean, elegant, versus an older generation really feels like gray is implying like old age, sadness, boring, dull, and they are just do not have the same affinity for the color gray. And it probably has everything to do with the computer. And younger people are brought up looking at computers. Computers nowadays are basically silver. And so I think we have a much more positive association to that color gray. You also see gray a ton on digital design because it's not quite as harsh as black on the eye when you're reading stuff on the screen. So I think just from exposure to gray, younger people are more apt to have a positive association with the color. And then I think this is the last color, black. Black is going to portray a sense of luxury. It is recognized that consumers tend to associate black with sophistication and elegance. We see a lot more brands using black as their main color, and it is definitely enhancing the perception of black. Lead is promoting products that are of increased value and quality. So black stuff, we consumers tend to think of it as being of a better quality and being more expensive, more luxurious. Adding a touch of silver or gold to your black definitely can enhance this sense of luxuriousness and exclusivity. So again, a lot of high-end cosmetics, high-end luxury goods, right, are all using black. Black is a powerful color, and when you contrast black with really bright colors or with white, it definitely makes your packaging stand out. And I think two examples of that would definitely be Monster energy drinks and Jack Daniels, which was the first to slide under black. These two examples too, I think, are really nice black packaging, right? The colors just pop off, and the whole thing definitely looks very luxurious, very quality, very inviting. Here are some logos, brands that use black as their primary color. I think it's interesting, a lot of sports apparel brands, black is one of their primary colors. And then, of course, like Chanel, the YSL, Paul Smith, those are very high-end luxury brands, all about black. And here you go. Power, elegance, mystery, sophistication. And then, of course, there are definitely some negatives associated with black, like evil and sadness and death. But I think, again, context is everything. So these next couple of slides I think are really interesting. I definitely recommend you come back through this PowerPoint and, save a copy of this slide to reference as you work on what colors would be appropriate for your brands that you're developing. What I like about this one is you kind of look at the key traits of the different colors on the left-hand side, and then it's just a whole bunch of different logo brands that fall within those colors, and then there's little symbols at the bottom that help relate to the words on the side, which I think is a fun little infographic. So I think it really helps you visualize these different brands that you're pretty familiar with, and start to understand maybe why they're using the colors that they're using, or how maybe the first word that you associate with some of these brands plays right into these colors that they're choosing. So even though you maybe had no idea that, blue was all about trustworthiness, you just inherently felt like Oral-B, toothpaste and toothbrush maker, was a trustworthy brand. You trusted them to produce toothpaste that would help you not get cavities. And I think that's fun to be like, oh, and their color's blue. That totally works. So, fun chart. Enjoy it. This next chart has some different attributes than the first chart did. But again, it's putting together some of the key associations with these colors. into a visual diagram for you to reference. When you're deciding what colors are most appropriate for your logos, instead of thinking about what colors go with the industry that your logo is for or the product that your logo is for, instead think about the personality of your brand. Right? So like this whole time I've been saying, what are the key attributes or characteristics you want to promote in your logo design? Well, those same attributes and characteristics should be portrayed through your color selections as well, right? So for an example, if you had an outdoor gear company like a REI kind of a place, instead of being like, well, it's outdoors, so I should just pick green or brown. Instead, maybe thinking about who is my company, is my brand? Is it daring? Is it adventurous? Because those kind of adjectives and attributes definitely evoke different colors than just saying outdoors, right? So that's what I want you to think about as you start to add color to your logos. What are the real characteristics, the real traits you're trying to project in this logo design? So in the back of this deck, I just have a couple quick slides on terminology. I always think this is a good refresher. I know I always forget and probably use the wrong words all the time, so we'll all be refreshed. So when we say hue, hue is the main property of color. It's the property of light by which the color of an object is classified as red, blue, green, yellow in the color spectrum. So a rainbow, like this, shows the melting of one hue into another, from red to violet, and all the shades in between. We can use the noun hue to mean both a color and a shade of a color. So green is a hue, and turquoise is a hue of both green and blue. So hue equals color. Saturation. Saturation is the intensity of a hue from a gray tone with no saturation to pure vivid color, which is high saturation. High saturation colors come off as more cheerful or deep, like fully saturated orange, versus the more desaturated, sort of like peachy gray color, right? Would be how we're talking about saturation. It's from vivid color, like vivid orange, to a more gray tone, which will look more like a pastel, gray or pastel. And we have value. Value refers to the lightness, brightness, or darkness of a color. So the value in art will refer to the shadows and the highlights that gives work dimension. It's also going to be what separates your different objects from each other and their background. So the value of your colors, right? Making sure that our colors don't clash where they're not like vibrating on you, and to make sure that there's enough of a value contrast that you can see distinctly the different elements in your logo design that are different colors. Then brightness is simply both the hue of a color and the value of a color. So it's going to talk about the lightness of a color and its ability to replicate light or reflection or luminance. Right, so if you have a bright color, it has a strong hue and a high value. So it's easy to see. When you lower the brightness, everything starts to again go lower in saturation. It starts to get muddier. It starts to be harder to see the difference between the colors. All right, so we've got some common color combos for you. Of course, we have our complementary colors. You have one color on the color wheel and you pick the color directly opposite of it. So popular choices when trying to pick secondary colors for your brand or for your logo. Your logo can absolutely be one color, and that we made a one color black logo. If you want your final logo to be a one color red logo, for example, that is perfectly fine. If you want your logo to be a few colors, that is perfectly fine too, and it's your job to figure out what colors those are and what the relationship between the colors are going to be. There's also, you are going to have the opportunity to make additional materials for your brand outside of the logo. So again, maybe your logo is only going to be one color, maybe two colors, but then you're going to use these additional colors to flesh out the rest of the brand materials later too. So don't feel like you have to shove it all into the logo. You can, but you don't have to. Just keep that in mind as you're trying to pick colors. So we've got our complementary colors here. The complementary colors are definitely going to provide, high contrast, high impact. When you place complementary colors next to or near each other, they appear brighter and more vibrant. Then we have our split complementary color scheme, which is going to use 3 colors. So you start with one color on the wheel, like blue. You find its complement, orange, and you use the 2 colors on either side of it. So in this instance, it's blue and red-orange and yellow-orange. And then your last color option would be, of popular color combinations, would be analogous colors. So these are the easiest to find on the color wheel. It's basically you pick a color and then you choose the 2 colors directly next to it. So like if you picked red, you would do some grouping of pink, red, and orange. Mixing colors that are adjacent to each other definitely creates a very colorful and harmonious look. When you're using analogous colors, it's best to choose one main color, and then the other colors are more accent colors to help keep your design not looking too chaotic. So if we're looking for color inspiration, we have a couple different options here. You can go outside, right? It's summer. There's plenty of things in bloom. There's colors everywhere. Go look at nature, be inspired by your natural surroundings. Maybe someone has a cool front door, painted a fun color that will inspire you. Go outside. Plus, I also read recently that if you go for a walk for like 20 to 30 minutes and you kind of just like let your mind wander, it's really helpful to restoring your creativity and reducing your stress and just helping your mind sort of take a minute. So go for a walk. You could go shopping. A lot of companies spend a lot of money on research to figure out how to merchandise their products. Like, what should the packaging look like? What should the colors be? How should it be displayed in the store? That is a whole industry in and of itself. So you can definitely go shopping, go take inspiration from, other retailers, other marketers, other designers out there who are doing it and see what you like. And then of course, so stand by, flip through some magazines, or venture off to the library to flip through some magazines, or go online and use the digital resources we have available, like the ComArts Gallery and some of our other websites that we've been taking inspiration from. See what other people are doing. You might find interesting color combinations in any grouping of designs, ads, whatever you find, right? You can find color inspiration anywhere. And then if you're still not sure what colors you should be using, these are just 3 of the many apps and websites out there that will help you develop a color palette. I think these are good if you're really not sure, if you have a color that you like, but you're not sure what else goes with that color, or you're just sort of feeling like the combinations you're creating just aren't hitting the right aesthetic that you're trying to achieve, or the right attributes for your brand, I think these could be a good jumping off point to kind of get you going in the right direction. So again, feel free to check out any of these websites. Maybe it will help you. Maybe you think it's silly. It's up to you. All right, so that is our whole lecture. I hope it was interesting. I hope it kind of helps you narrow your focus of how to think about adding color to your logos. Again, we saw a lot of logos just in this deck, and we've seen a lot of logos through the whole semester. Go out into the world, you'll see a lot more logos. Your logo doesn't have to have a gazillion colors in it. It doesn't even have to have more than 1 or 2 colors in it. So don't feel like you have to go bonkers. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes bonkers is better. You guys decide. And again, if you pick a whole palette of colors, but your logo only ends up being 1 or 2, keep that palette of colors because you're going to use it in the next project where we flesh out the rest of the brand materials. So there will be more places to put more colors in the coming weeks. So don't feel like you have to shove it all into this one logo. That's my only word of advice. But otherwise, have fun, go look at colors.